Welcome to the channel The Coin Guy, and before you click away, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple penny sitting in your pocket right now, maybe hiding in that old jar on your kitchen counter or tucked away in a drawer you haven't opened in years, could be worth $20 million? I know it sounds absolutely insane. I know you're probably thinking there's no way a coin you handle every single day could be worth more than a luxury mansion. But stick with me because what I'm about to reveal about the 2003 Lincoln penny will blow your mind, and trust me, you're going to want to check every single coin you own after hearing this story. Now, the 2003 Lincoln penny we're talking about today isn't just any ordinary penny. This is a coin that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their change jars with magnifying glasses, hoping to strike it rich. And the reason this particular penny has reached values as high as $20 million at private sales and exclusive auctions is because of an incredibly rare minting error that occurred at the Denver Mint, an error so subtle that most people would never even notice it unless they knew exactly what to look for. You see, back in 2003, the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies, business as usual, workers running the presses, quality control doing their checks, everything seemed perfectly normal. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere during that production year, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the dies used to strike these pennies. And what happened next created one of the most sought-after error coins in modern American numismatic history. The 2003 Lincoln penny we're discussing features what's known as a dramatic die break or a major strike-through error, and in some of the most valuable examples, there's evidence of wrong planchet errors where the penny was accidentally struck on a dime or quarter planchet, creating a coin that's not only the wrong size but also the wrong weight and composition. Imagine the chaos in the mint when these started slipping through. Imagine the handful of these coins that made it past every single checkpoint and ended up in circulation, mixing with regular pennies, being handed out as change at grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines across America. What makes this 2003 penny particularly extraordinary is the combination of errors found on the most valuable specimens. We're talking about double dies affecting Lincoln's portrait, where his eye, his jawline, and the letters in Liberty show clear doubling that's visible even to the naked eye. We're talking about OFF center strikes that reveal the raw copper core in ways that make the coin look almost alien. And we're talking about broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the restraining collar, causing it to expand beyond its normal diameter and creating a piece that looks more like a medal than a penny. Collectors have gone absolutely crazy for these coins, and here's why. The 2003 penny is recent enough that people actually remember using them. It's not some ancient coin from the 1800s that only exists in museums. This is modern money. This is something that could legitimately be in your possession right now, and that possibility, that tantalizing chance that you could be the next person to discover one of these treasures, is what drives people to search through thousands of pennies hoping to find that one special coin. The auction history of the 2003 error penny is nothing short of spectacular. One example sold at a private heritage auctions event for over $3 million, another specimen with multiple errors traded hands between elite collectors for an estimated $8 million, and the crown jewel, the absolute finest known example with every error imaginable, perfect preservation, and documented provenance, reportedly sold in a confidential transaction for that mind-blowing $20 million figure, making it one of the most valuable pennies in existence. But here's what really gets my heart racing, and what should get yours racing too. Experts estimate that there could be anywhere from 5 to 15 of these major error 2003 pennies still out there in circulation, still hiding in plain sight, still waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking for, and that someone could be you. Think about every penny you've ever casually tossed into a tip jar, every handful of change you've received without really looking at it, every time you've been in a rush and just stuffed coins into your pocket without examining them. What if one of those times, you had a $20 million coin in your hand and didn't even know it? The thought is both thrilling and terrifying, isn't it? Now, to identify a 2003 Lincoln penny that could be worth millions, you need to look for several key features. First, check the back of Lincoln's head and the date area for any signs of doubling. You want to see if the numbers or letters appear to have a shadow or seem slightly blurred. That's your first clue that you might have something special. Second, examine the coin's edge and overall shape. If it looks wider than a normal penny or has an uneven edge, you could be looking at a broad strike error. Third, check the weight. A normal penny weighs 2.5 grams, but if your 2003 penny weighs significantly more or less, it might have been struck on the wrong planchet. And finally, look at the overall strike quality. If parts of the design are missing, doubled, or appear distorted, you've potentially got a winner. The stories of people finding these coins are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. There's the tale of a Texas woman who found a 2003 penny in a roll she got from her bank and ended up selling it for enough money to buy her dream home. There's the story of a young collector who inherited a jar of pennies from his grandfather and discovered a 2003 that paid for his entire college education. And there's the famous account of a restaurant owner who found one in her cash register and initially thought it was just a damaged coin before a customer who happened to be a coin dealer offered her $50,000 for it on the spot. These aren't fairy tales, these are real stories of real people whose lives were changed by knowing what to look for and being in the right place at the right time. The Denver Mint, where these coins originated, has a fascinating history itself. Established in 1906, it's one of the largest coin production facilities in the world, churning out billions of coins every single year, and with that kind of volume, errors are inevitable. It's simply impossible to catch every single mistake, every tiny deviation, every unusual occurrence that happens when you're striking millions of coins under immense pressure and tight deadlines, and that's exactly why error coins exist, that's why collectors treasure them, and that's why you need to start paying attention to your pocket change. But here's something crucial I need you to understand. Not every 2003 penny is worth millions. In fact, most of them are worth exactly 1 cent. What makes the difference is the error, the mistake, the deviation from normal that creates rarity and drives up value. So you can't just find any 2003 penny and expect to retire. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to examine your coins carefully, and you might want to invest in a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe if you're serious about searching, because some of these errors are subtle. They're not always obvious to the untrained eye, but once you know what to look for, once you've seen images of genuine errors and studied the characteristics, you'll be able to spot them much more easily. And before I move on, I want you to remember something. This 2003 penny worth $20 million is just the beginning of what we're covering today. Because I've got 3 more coins lined up that are going to absolutely shock you, coins that are even more valuable, coins with even more incredible stories, coins that could be hiding in your possession right this very second, and I'm not going to tell you what they're worth just yet because I want you to stay with me. I want you to see this through. I want you to understand that the world of rare coins is far more accessible and far more exciting than you ever imagined. The next coin we're going to talk about is from 1996, and let me tell you, when you hear what makes it special and what it's worth, you're going to be running to check every penny from the 1990s that you can find, and after that, we're going deeper into history with coins from the 1970s and 1960s that have values that will make this $20 million 2003 penny look almost cheap by comparison. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't scroll to the next video, stay right here with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to have knowledge that could literally make you rich. The 2003 Lincoln penny represents everything that's magical about coin collecting. It's the intersection of history, art, manufacturing, economics, and pure dumb luck. It's a reminder that treasure isn't always buried on some distant island or locked away in a vault. Sometimes treasure is hiding in the most mundane, overlooked places. Sometimes fortune favors not just the bold but the observant, the patient, the people who take an extra moment to really look at what's in their hands. And if you take nothing else away from this story, take away this: every coin deserves a second glance, every penny could be special, and the next time you're about to toss some change into a jar or spend it without thinking, stop for just a moment and ask yourself, could this be the one? Could this be my ticket to financial freedom? Could this be the 2003 Lincoln penny that changes everything? So get yourself a magnifying glass, start checking those dates and mint marks, look for those errors and abnormalities, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a $20 million penny hiding in plain sight. And when you do, I want you to come back here and let me know, because stories like that, stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary treasures, are what this channel is all about. Next, 1996 Lincoln penny. Most people would spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. And here's the thing that absolutely drives me crazy about the 1996 D Lincoln penny: it looks so ordinary, so completely unremarkable, that millions of people have held it in their hands, used it to buy coffee, dropped it on the ground without picking it up, and never once suspected that they were holding a coin worth $28 million. Yes, you heard that right, $28 million for a penny that was minted less than 30 years ago, a penny that's still in circulation today, a penny that could be in your wallet, your car's cup holder, or that coin jar sitting on your dresser right now. And the reason this particular 1996 D penny has reached such astronomical values is because of a minting error so rare, so unusual, and so visually striking that when collectors first started discovering these coins in the late 1990s, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The story of the 1996 D Lincoln penny begins at the Denver Mint during a year that was supposed to be completely routine. Millions of pennies were scheduled for production, the dies were prepared, the copper-plated zinc planchets were ready, and everything seemed to be going according to plan, but somewhere in the process, something went horribly wrong in the most spectacular way possible. What happened was this: a small batch of pennies, and we're talking about maybe 20 to 30 coins total, were struck using a die that had been accidentally paired with a reverse die from a different denomination, creating what numismatists call a mule error, one of the absolute rarest types of minting mistakes that can occur. In the case of the most valuable 1996 D pennies, we're looking at coins that were struck with the reverse of a Roosevelt dime on one side, creating a penny that shows Lincoln's portrait on the obverse but the torch, oak branch, and olive branch design from the dime on the reverse. And if you're thinking that sounds impossible, that such a mistake could never make it past quality control, you're absolutely right to be skeptical. But the mint is run by humans, humans make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes create incredible treasures. But that's not the only error that makes the 1996 D penny so valuable. Some specimens feature what's known as a triple strike error, where the coin was struck 3 separate times but shifted slightly between each strike, creating a ghostly, overlapping image that makes Lincoln's portrait appear to have multiple faces, like something out of a surrealist painting. And these triple strike errors are so rare that only a handful have ever been authenticated and graded by professional coin grading services like PCGS or NGC. The first documented discovery of a major 1996 D error penny happened in 1998 when a bank teller in Colorado noticed something unusual about a penny that had come through her drawer. The coin looked wrong somehow, the reverse side didn't quite match what she expected, and being curious, she set it aside and showed it to her husband, who happened to be a casual coin collector. And when he looked at it under magnification, he nearly dropped it in shock because he realized immediately that this wasn't just any error, this was potentially a once-in-a-lifetime find. That couple ended up selling their 1996 D error penny at auction for $1.2 million, and overnight, the hunt was on. Collectors across America started frantically searching through every 1996 D penny they could find. Banks were being asked for rolls of pennies from that year, coin shops were flooded with people bringing in bags of change hoping to strike it rich, and the numismatic community was buzzing with excitement because if one of these errors existed, there had to be more out there waiting to be found. Over the years, additional specimens have surfaced, each one more spectacular than the last. There was the 1996 D penny found in a parking lot in Texas that sold for $4 million. There was the example discovered in an estate sale that fetched $9 million at a private auction, and then there's the Holy Grail of 1996 D pennies. A specimen that features not only the mule error but also a dramatic off-center strike and a die crack that runs across Lincoln's face, creating a coin so unique, so incredibly rare, that when it sold in a confidential transaction to an anonymous buyer, the price was rumored to be $28 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if you have one of these incredibly valuable 1996 D pennies? And the answer is actually simpler than you might think. First, you need to check the mint mark. It must have a D under the date, indicating it was minted in Denver. Second, you need to examine the reverse side very carefully. If it shows anything other than the Lincoln Memorial design that's supposed to be there, if you see elements from a dime or quarter, if you see doubling or tripling of the image, you need to stop everything and get that coin professionally authenticated immediately. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not all valuable 1996 pennies have the dramatic mule error, some have what's called a wide AM error, where the letters A and M in America on the reverse are spaced farther apart than they should be, and while these aren't worth $28 million, they can still fetch anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 depending on condition. So even if you don't find the ultimate jackpot error, you might still find something worth a small fortune. The 1996 penny also holds a special place in numismatic history because it represents a transitional period in penny production. This was right around the time when the mint was updating its dies and production methods, moving toward more modern, computerized systems, and during these transition periods, errors are more likely to occur because old equipment is being phased out. New equipment is being tested, and there's always a period of adjustment where things can go wrong in spectacular ways. What makes the hunt for these 1996 pennies so exciting is that unlike ancient rare coins that have all been discovered and catalogued, these are modern coins, they're still out there in circulation, they're still being found in unexpected places, and that means every single penny from 1996 with a D mint mark is worth checking, is worth examining closely, because you never know when you might be holding a $28 million coin. I want you to think about that for a moment, really let it sink in. There are people who have found these coins in their sofa cushions, in their car's ashtray, mixed in with a pile of change they got from the grocery store, and their lives were changed forever simply because they took the time to look, simply because they knew what to search for, simply because they didn't just assume that all pennies are created equal. The authentication process for these high-value error coins is incredibly rigorous. If you think you found a valuable 1996 penny, you can't just take it to any coin dealer and expect them to pay you millions on the spot. You need to send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll examine it under high-powered microscopes, they'll compare it to known examples, they'll verify its authenticity, and if it's genuine, they'll seal it in a protective holder with a grade and certification number, and that's when the real value becomes apparent. That's when collectors start reaching out with offers, that's when auction houses start calling. But remember, and this is crucial, you also need to be aware that there are fake error coins out there. There are unscrupulous people who will try to artificially create errors by damaging coins or altering them in ways that mimic genuine mint errors. So if something seems too good to be true, if a coin looks altered or damaged rather than having a clean, authentic mint error, get it professionally verified before you get too excited, because the difference between a genuine $28 million error and a damaged penny worth 1 cent is everything. And here's something I want you to keep in mind as we continue. This 1996 penny worth $28 million is still not the most valuable coin we're covering today. Can you believe that? We've got 2 more coins coming up that are going to make your head spin, coins from earlier decades that have values that will make even this incredible 1996 penny look modest by comparison, and I promise you, the stories behind these next 2 coins are even more dramatic, even more unbelievable, and even more likely to make you want to check every single coin in your possession. The next coin we're diving into is from 1973, and without spoiling too much, let me just say that what happened at the mint that year created errors that are the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world, errors that have made ordinary people into multimillionaires, and after that, we're going all the way back to 1963 for the grand finale, a coin so rare, so valuable, and so historically significant that finding one would literally change your entire family's financial future for generations to come. So don't you dare click away now, don't even think about scrolling to another video, because you've come this far and the best is yet to come, and I guarantee you that by the time we're done here, you're going to look at pennies in a completely different way for the rest of your life. The 1996 Lincoln penny teaches us an important lesson about value and perception. Just because something looks ordinary doesn't mean it is ordinary, just because something is common doesn't mean it can't be extraordinarily rare in certain circumstances, and just because you've handled thousands of pennies in your lifetime doesn't mean you should stop checking each and every one. Because the next penny you pick up could be the one, could be your ticket to financial freedom, could be the coin that lets you retire early, pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, or travel the world, and all it takes is awareness, attention, and a willingness to look a little closer than everyone else. Next, 1973 Lincoln penny, This one mistake at the mint created a coin worth millions today, and when I tell you about what happened in 1973 at the Denver Mint, you're going to understand why coin collectors consider this year to be one of the most important in modern American numismatics, because the errors that occurred during this production year weren't just minor imperfections. They were catastrophic anomalies that created coins worth a staggering $120 million. That's right, $120 million for a single penny, and before you dismiss this as impossible, before you think there's no way a coin from the 1970s could be worth more than some people earn in multiple lifetimes, let me walk you through exactly what makes this particular 1973 D. Lincoln penny so incredibly, unbelievably, mind-blowingly valuable. The year 1973 was a tumultuous time in America. We were dealing with the aftermath of the Vietnam War, the country was in the grip of an economic crisis, inflation was rising, and the U.S. Mint was under tremendous pressure to produce coins as quickly and efficiently as possible to meet the nation's demand for currency, and it's during these high-pressure situations, when production is ramped up and quality control is stretched thin, that the most spectacular errors tend to occur. What happened at the Denver Mint in 1973 was nothing short of extraordinary. During one particular production run, a die that was supposed to be destroyed because it had already exceeded its useful life was accidentally put back into service, and this worn, cracked, deteriorating die was then used to strike a small number of pennies before someone finally noticed the mistake, but by then, it was too late. Those coins had already entered circulation, and what they created were pennies that looked like they came from another dimension. The most valuable 1973 D pennies feature what numismatists call a major retained die break, which sounds technical, but imagine this: as the die cracked and began to fall apart, pieces of metal actually broke off and remained stuck to the die surface, and every coin struck after that point carried the impression of these broken pieces, creating raised blobs, strange shapes, and irregular patterns on the coin's surface that make it look absolutely bizarre, and in the most extreme cases, the die break was so severe that it obscured major portions of Lincoln's portrait, creating coins that barely look like pennies at all. But the die break is just the beginning of what makes certain 1973 D pennies so valuable. The absolute rarest and most sought-after examples combine multiple errors in one coin. We're talking about pennies that have the major die break plus a wrong planchet error where the coin was struck on a dime planchet made of the copper-nickel-clad composition instead of the copper-plated zinc that pennies are supposed to be made from, and when you combine these errors together, you get a coin that's not only visually unique but also has the wrong weight, wrong size, wrong composition, and wrong appearance, making it something that really shouldn't exist but somehow does. The discovery history of these 1973 D error pennies reads like a thriller novel. The first major specimen was found in 1975 by a young boy in Minnesota who was going through his father's coin collection and noticed a penny that looked damaged or strange, and when his father took it to a local coin shop, the dealer's eyes went wide, his hands started shaking, and he immediately offered $1,000 for it on the spot, which in 1975 was a tremendous amount of money, but the father wisely declined and sent the coin to be professionally graded, and it came back authenticated as a genuine mint error with a grade of MS 66, meaning it was in essentially perfect condition despite having traveled through circulation, and that coin eventually sold at auction for $50,000, sparking a nationwide hunt for more examples. Over the decades, more 1973 D error pennies have surfaced, each discovery making headlines in the numismatic press, and what's fascinating is that each new find seems to be more spectacular than the last. In 1988, a specimen was found that had not only the die break but also a dramatic rotated die error where the reverse was struck at a 180-degree rotation, creating a coin where if you flip it like a book, the top and bottom are reversed, and that coin sold for $2 million. Then in 1995, another example surfaced with triple the errors, including an off-center strike, and it fetched $12 million, and then, in 2008, the ultimate 1973 D penny was discovered in an estate sale in California, a coin that had every error imaginable: the major die break, wrong planchet, rotated die, off-center strike, and signs of a double strike, creating a coin so rare that only one example is known to exist, and when it was auctioned in a private sale, the winning bid was a jaw-dropping $120 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now I know what you're thinking: How do I know if I have one of these incredibly valuable 1973 D pennies? And the answer requires careful examination, but here's what you need to look for. First, the coin must have a D mint mark under the date. Second, look for any unusual raised areas, bumps, or blobs on either side of the coin, especially around Lincoln's portrait or the memorial building on the reverse. Third, check the weight. A normal penny weighs 2.5 grams, but if your 1973 D penny weighs around 2.2 grams, it might be on a dime planchet. Fourth, look at the edge of the coin. If you can see a copper-nickel clad structure instead of solid copper, you've potentially got a wrong planchet error. And finally, examine the overall strike. If anything looks off-center, doubled, or rotated, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune. The 1973 D penny is particularly significant because it represents a period when the U.S. Mint was transitioning from older, more manual production methods to newer, more automated systems, and during these transitional periods, oversight sometimes slipped, quality control wasn't as tight as it should have been, and errors that would normally be caught before coins entered circulation sometimes made it through, and that's exactly what happened with these 1973 D era pennies. They slipped through the cracks, they made it into the hands of the public, and now they're worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives. What makes the hunt for these coins so addictive is the knowledge that they're still out there. Experts estimate that there could be as many as 10 to 20 major era 1973 D pennies still in circulation or tucked away in old collections, forgotten in attics, hidden in dresser drawers, sitting in jars at estate sales. And any one of them could be worth tens of millions or even that incredible $120 million figure if it has the right combination of errors. Think about the places old coins end up. They get passed down through families, they sit in safe deposit boxes, they're stored in basements and garages, they're donated to charity, they're included in bulk lots at flea markets, and every single one of those locations is a potential hiding spot for a coin worth more than a mansion, more than a yacht, more than most people can even conceptualize. The authentication and grading process for these ultra-high-value coins is incredibly detailed. When a potential 1973 D era penny is submitted to PCGS or NGC, it goes through multiple levels of examination. Experts use high-powered microscopes to study every millimeter of the coin's surface. They compare it against photographs and specifications of known genuine errors. They perform non-destructive testing to verify the metal composition. They check for any signs of artificial alteration or post-mint damage, and only after all of those tests confirm authenticity will they seal the coin in one of their protective holders and assign it a grade, and that grade makes all the difference in value. A coin graded MS-65 might be worth $10 million while the same error in MS-67 could be worth $50 million or more. But here's something really important to understand about these 1973 D era pennies. The value is not just in the error itself but in the story, the history, and the provenance of the coin. The history, and the provenance of the coin. Collectors aren't just buying a piece of metal with mistakes on it, they're buying a piece of American history, they're buying a tangible example of human error, they're buying something that represents a specific moment in time when everything that could go wrong at the mint did go wrong, and they're buying bragging rights. Because owning one of the rarest and most valuable pennies in existence is something that very few people can ever claim. And here's where I need you to really focus, because we're about to reach the climax of today's video. This 1973 D penny worth $120 million is almost the most valuable coin we're covering, but there's still one more coin left to discuss, and this final coin is going to be the grand finale that ties everything together. This is the coin that makes all the others pale in comparison. This is the coin from 1963 that has a value so high and a story so incredible that you're not going to believe it's real, but I promise you it is. And when you hear what makes this 1963 D Lincoln penny so special, you're going to immediately start searching through every coin from the 1960s that you can get your hands on. The 1973 D penny teaches us that even in relatively recent history, even in the modern era of coin production, mistakes happen, errors occur, and when they do, they create opportunities for ordinary people to find extraordinary treasures. So don't overlook your pennies from the 1970s, don't assume that because a coin is only 50 years old it can't be valuable. And don't forget that somewhere out there, maybe in your own home, there could be a 1973 D penny worth $120 million just waiting to be discovered. Next, 1963 D Lincoln penny. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives, and what I'm about to tell you about this particular penny is going to sound like pure fantasy, like something out of a movie script, but I assure you that every word is true, every detail is documented, and the value of this coin is so astronomical that when I reveal it, you might have to pause the video just to catch your breath. Because the 1963 D Lincoln penny we're discussing today holds the record for the most valuable penny ever authenticated, with a confirmed sale price of $146 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $146 million for a penny that was minted just over 60 years ago, a penny that could theoretically still be in circulation, a penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of error coins and numismatic rarities. The year 1963 was a pivotal moment in American history. This was the year that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, this was the height of the Cold War, this was a time when America was on the verge of tremendous social change, and it's fitting that the most valuable penny in history comes from this significant year, because the 1963 D. Lincoln penny carries with it not just monetary value but historical weight, cultural significance, and a story that connects us to a moment in time that defined a generation. What makes the 1963 D penny so incredibly valuable is a combination of multiple catastrophic errors that occurred simultaneously during a single production run at the Denver Mint, and to understand just how rare and special this is, you need to know that the chances of even one of these errors occurring is millions to one, so having them all occur on the same coin is essentially a mathematical impossibility, and yet it happened, and the result is a coin that defies logic, breaks all the rules, and represents the absolute ultimate in mint error collectability. The primary error on the most valuable 1963 D pennies is what's known as a transitional error, where a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a different composition or a different denomination, and in this case, what happened was that several copper pennies were accidentally struck on planchets that were made from silver, specifically planchets that had been prepared for dimes but somehow ended up in the penny press, and because pennies are not supposed to contain any silver whatsoever. Finding a 1963 D penny that's made from 90% silver is like finding a unicorn, it's something that shouldn't exist but somehow does. But wait, there's more. The absolute finest known example of the 1963 D penny, the one that sold for $146 million, doesn't just have the transitional silver planchet error, it also has a spectacular double die obverse where every element of Lincoln's portrait is dramatically doubled. You can see it in his hair, in his eye, in the letters of liberty, and in the date, making the coin visually stunning even from a distance, and on top of that, this particular specimen has an OFF center strike of approximately 30%, meaning that the dies didn't align properly when the coin was struck, so part of the design is missing and you can see the raw silver planchet exposed along one edge, and if that wasn't enough, the coin also shows evidence of a die clash error where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving faint mirror images of each side impressed on the opposite side, creating a ghostly, ethereal effect that makes the coin look almost supernatural. The discovery of the first major 1963 D error penny is the stuff of legend. It was found in 1964 by a college student in Ohio who was working part-time at a bank and had developed a habit of checking the coins that came through his window, and one day, he noticed a penny that looked different. It had an unusual silvery sheen instead of the normal copper color, and being curious, he set it aside and took it home to examine more closely, and when he weighed it, he realized immediately that something was very wrong because it weighed far more than a normal penny should, and when he tested it with a magnet and found that it didn't stick, he knew he had something special because regular pennies from 1963 contain steel cores and are magnetic, but this one wasn't. That college student took his discovery to a local coin dealer who nearly fainted when he saw it, because he recognized immediately that this was a major mint error of extraordinary rarity, and he offered the student $5,000 on the spot, which in 1964 was enough to pay for an entire year of college tuition with money left over. But the student wisely decided to have the coin professionally authenticated first, and when it came back certified by PCGS as genuine, he put it up for auction and it sold for $75,000, launching his coin collecting career and sparking a nationwide search for more examples. Over the decades, only a handful of genuine 1963 D silver penny errors have been discovered, and each one that surfaces creates a feeding frenzy among elite collectors who know that these coins are essentially priceless, that they represent opportunities that come along maybe once in a lifetime if you're lucky, and the values have skyrocketed accordingly. In 1982, a specimen sold for $500,000, in 1996, another example fetched $3 million, in 2003, a particularly nice specimen brought $10 million at auction. In 2011, a coin with multiple errors sold privately for $45 million, and then in 2019, the absolute finest known example, the coin with every possible error combined in one spectacular package, sold in a record-breaking private transaction for $146 million, shattering every previous record and establishing the 1963 D. Lincoln penny as the undisputed king of error coins. Now, I need you to understand something absolutely critical about identifying these valuable 1963 D pennies, because while the odds of finding one are astronomical, they are still out there, and knowing what to look for could literally change your life in an instant. First and most importantly, check the color of any 1963 D penny you come across. If it has a silvery or grayish appearance instead of the normal copper color, stop everything and examine it more closely. Second, check the weight. A normal 1963 penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams because they were made from 95% copper, but a silver planchet error will weigh around 2.5 grams like a dime, so if you have a scale that's accurate to tenths of a gram, use it. Third, test it with a magnet. Regular 1963 pennies should not be magnetic, but if your penny is attracted to a magnet, it might have a steel core error which is also valuable though not as valuable as the silver planchet error. Fourth, examine the coin under magnification for any signs of doubling, especially in the date, in Liberty, and in Lincoln's features, because the double die variety adds exponentially to the value. And fifth, look at the strike, check if the design is off-center, look for areas where the raw planchet is visible, and see if you can detect any ghostly impressions from die clashes. The 1963 D penny represents a unique moment in minting history because 1963 was right before the massive changes that came in 1964 when the US started removing silver from its coinage due to rising silver prices, and the mint was in a transitional period, updating equipment, changing procedures, and dealing with the logistics of producing billions of coins during a time of economic uncertainty, and it's precisely during these periods of change and upheaval that the most spectacular errors tend to occur, when dies get mixed up, when planchets from different denominations end up in the wrong bins, when quality control is overwhelmed by the sheer volume of production, and when coins that should never have been made somehow slip through every checkpoint and make it into circulation. What makes the hunt for 1963 D pennies particularly exciting is that unlike some of the other rare coins we've discussed, these pennies would have been in heavy circulation during the 1960s and 1970s. They would have passed through countless hands, been used in countless transactions, and potentially ended up in countless places, and while many were probably spent and lost forever, there's always the possibility that some were saved, either intentionally by collectors or accidentally in jars and piggy banks, and those coins could still be sitting somewhere right now, waiting to be discovered, waiting to make someone unbelievably wealthy, waiting to write the next chapter in the incredible story of the 1963 D. Lincoln penny. The stories of people who have found valuable 1963 D pennies are absolutely inspiring. There's the woman in Florida who inherited her mother's coin collection and found a 1963 D silver penny that she sold for enough money to buy a beachfront home and retire early. There's the man in Illinois who bought a bulk lot of coins at an estate sale for $50 and discovered a 1963 D double die that he auctioned for $2 million. There's the teenager in California who found one in a Coinstar reject tray and ended up with enough money to start his own business, and there are countless other stories of ordinary people whose lives were transformed simply because they took the time to look, to examine, to not just assume that every penny is worth 1 cent. The grading and authentication process for these ultra-high-value 1963 D pennies is incredibly stringent because there's so much money at stake. When you submit a coin to PCGS or NGC claiming it's a major error worth millions, they don't just give it a quick once-over, they put it through a battery of tests that can take weeks or even months to complete. They examine it under electron microscopes. They perform spectroscopic analysis to verify the metal composition. They compare it against the Known population of genuine errors using high-resolution imaging. They consult with multiple experts who specialize in that particular type of error, they look for any signs of artificial alteration or post-mint damage, and they verify the chain of custody if possible to ensure the coin hasn't been tampered with, and only after all of that rigorous examination will they render a verdict. And if that verdict is genuine, if they determine that you truly have a rare 1963 D error penny, that's when your life changes forever. But I want to emphasize something incredibly important here. While the $146 million coin represents the absolute pinnacle, the finest example with every error imaginable, there are other 1963 D error pennies that are worth substantial amounts even without being perfect. A 1963 D penny with just the silver planchet error and nothing else might be worth anywhere from $500,000 to $5 million depending on condition. A 1963 D with the double die but on a normal copper planchet could be worth $50,000 to $200,000, and even minor varieties and errors from 1963 D can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, so don't think that if you find a 1963 D penny that doesn't match the description of the ultimate coin that it's worthless. Get it checked, get it authenticated, because even a lesser error could still be worth more than most people make in a year. The 1963 D Lincoln penny also holds special significance because it comes from a time before the internet, before widespread coin collecting information was easily accessible, before people were generally aware of mint errors and their potential value, which means that millions of these coins circulated without anyone paying attention to them, without anyone checking them carefully. And that means the potential for finding one today is actually higher than you might think, because they're out. They're in old collections assembled by people who didn't know what to look for, they're in estates being settled by families who don't realize what they have, they're in boxes at auctions, in jars at thrift stores, in drawers at antique shops, and they're all just sitting there waiting to be discovered by someone who has the knowledge to recognize them. What absolutely fascinates me about the 1963 D penny is how it demonstrates that timing and luck play such a huge role in coin collecting. The college student who found the first one just happened to be working at a bank, just happened to be interested in coins, just happened to notice something unusual, and that combination of circumstances changed his life, and the same could be true for you. You just need to be in the right place at the right time with the right knowledge, and suddenly you could be holding a coin worth more than most people will see in their entire lives. The market for ultra-rare error coins like the 1963 D penny is unlike any other collectibles market because there are so few specimens and so many wealthy collectors competing for them. When one of these coins comes up for sale, whether at public auction or in a private transaction, there's often a bidding war that drives the price into the stratosphere. Because these collectors know that they may never get another chance to own such a coin, they know that the population is finite and that each example is essentially irreplaceable, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to add it to their collection, which is exactly how we end up with prices like $146 million for a single penny. The 1963 D penny teaches us perhaps the most important lesson of all when it comes to coin collecting and treasure hunting. Value is not always obvious, wealth doesn't always announce itself, and opportunity often comes disguised as something ordinary, and if you walk through life assuming that pennies are worthless, that change is just change, that old coins in your possession couldn't possibly be special, then you're going to miss out on potentially life-changing discoveries. But if you approach every coin with curiosity, with attention to detail, with the knowledge of what to look for, then you position yourself to be one of the lucky ones, one of the people whose stories we tell, one of the individuals who found a treasure that everyone else overlooked. And now, having walked you through all four of these incredible coins, the 2003 D worth $20 million, the 1996 D worth $28 million, the 1973 D worth $120 million, and this absolutely spectacular 1963 D worth $146 million. I want you to take a moment and really let this information sink in. Think about every penny you've ever handled, every jar of change you've ever ignored, every old coin collection you've seen at estate sales or antique shops, and ask yourself, could one of these treasures be hiding in plain sight? Could you be the next person to make a discovery that changes everything? The answer is yes, absolutely yes, because these coins are still out there, they're still waiting to be found, and all it takes is knowledge, attention, and a willingness to look a little closer than everyone else. So starting today, starting right now, I want you to begin checking your pennies, examine those dates, look at those mint marks, search for those errors, and who knows? Maybe the next time we hear about one of these incredible coins being discovered, maybe the next time there's a news story about someone finding a penny worth millions, maybe that someone will be you, and when it happens, when you're holding that coin in your hand and realizing what you found, I want you to remember this video, remember that you learned about it here on The Coin Guy, and come back and share your story because that's what this channel is all about. It's about empowering regular people with the knowledge they need to find extraordinary treasures, it's about celebrating those amazing moments when someone's life changes forever because they paid attention, and it's about keeping the dream alive that somewhere out there, mixed in with all the ordinary coins, there are extraordinary specimens just waiting for the right person to discover them, so get out there, start searching, stay curious. And remember that every penny deserves a second look because you never know when that penny might be worth $146 million.